the thing that's going to take the longest time for us to discuss is service reductions. One of the purposes of the study was to help the city plan if the SAFER grant was not reauthorized, and it was not reauthorized. So the city has some choices. Nobody wants to close a fire station, especially the fire station that's closest to their house. So there is no easy way to make these decisions. But what the city's currently doing, and what the fire department's currently doing, is they have a system of rolling blackouts, where if there are not enough firefighters that come to work on a day, if there's too many firefighters off on vacation, or sick leave, or training, the fire chief will take a unit out of service for the day. All 10 units are in service at nighttime, because the fire chief used the fire danger and the life hazard higher at nighttime, and I don't disagree with that. I don't think we disagree with that. But during the day, typically in New Bedford, there's an engine company or a ladder that's out of service. That's very unpredictable for the firefighters. Firefighters, and I was a firefighter a million years ago, firefighters depend on regularity. That if they're going to go to a fire on this street, where they're going to be the first unit to arrive, if they know that the next unit coming, the other firefighters are 3 minutes behind them, they'll do a certain set of things. They can take more risks if they know firefighters are right behind them. If they know it's going to be 10 minutes before the next fire truck gets there, they may take a different approach to the fire. And I don't mean to speak for the firefighters in the room, but I think that's true. If they don't know when their next unit is coming, if they're having to think, again, in the heat of an emergency, if they're having to think, oh, is engine 6 in service today or out of service? That does a disservice to the firefighters and to you. So we think if the city does not have the level of financial resources to support the whole fire department, they ought to do it in a planned way. So that's one of the reasons that we came to New Bedford, is to look at the options that the city has and list the pluses and minuses. We are not recommending that a station be closed outright, but what we are saying is that if the city does not have the level of resources that it needs to support all the fire stations and all the fire trucks in the city, that this is the way the fire department should shrink one unit if it has to. And I'll get to the detail as we go through a little bit. All right. Fire Station 2 is the main fire station downtown on Pleasant Street. Fire Station 5 is the station in the far north of the city, and Fire Station 9 is in the middle of the city. We do not recommend that any of those 3 stations be closed. Fire Station 2 is the headquarters. It has an engine, a ladder truck, and a chief in there. There's quite a number of firefighters in the station. It also houses all the fire department support units, a foam trailer, and some other stuff that's in the station, other units that are in the station. So we do not recommend that station be considered for closing. We do not recommend that Station 5 or Station 9 be considered for closing. If those stations were not in place, it would leave holes in the response system. Station 5, again, was the station at the far north of the city. If Station 5 were not there, it would be a long wait for a fire truck in the north part of the city. Same thing for Station 9 in the west. We do not recommend that Station 6 or Station 8, those are stations that are closer into downtown, be considered for closure by themselves. Station 6 and Station 8 both house ladder trucks, as does Station 2. Those ladder trucks are much too big to fit in the main fire station. If you've driven by them, you'll see that there are lean-to structures to the side of the station that were built to accommodate the ladder trucks. They're much too big to fit in any other fire station, except for Station 2. So it's not like we could say, close Station 6, put Engine 6 out of service, and move a ladder someplace else, because there's no place else in the city for it to go. So we do not recommend the closure of those stations because there's no suitable place for the ladder to go. We do not recommend the consolidation. We don't recommend the merger of Fire Station 5 and Fire Station 9. This is a coverage map of what the city would look like if Fire Station 5 and Fire Station 9 were combined. You'll see, and I apologize for the size, the report is online. It's much easier to see if you're able to look at the report online. But it leaves some areas uncovered at the far north of the city, but it leaves some very large areas west of 140 uncovered in the west of the city. So we do not recommend that those 2 stations be consolidated into one. That would require the construction of a new facility. When we first started our work in New Bedford, our understanding was that the city did not have the money to build a new fire station. Since we started working here, it's our understanding that the city may have the money to build a fire station that would allow a merger. We do not recommend the merger of 6 and 9 in the north part of the city for the reasons that we just stated. Sorry, 5 and 9, I'm sorry. The fire chief had talked about a site at Cove Road, just north and west of here, I believe. to combine Fire Station 6, which is in the southwest part of the city, and Fire Station 11, which is here on the peninsula. It's the site of an old grocery store, Shaw's grocery store. We do not recommend that site. It's too far west. It provides a lot of service or a lot of coverage to Dartmouth. Dartmouth is already getting a free ride in the industrial park in the north. We don't think that's the right place for the station. And less coverage to the south end of the peninsula. So we do not recommend that. And this is how coverage would look if those two stations were combined. So somewhat less coverage to the east and somewhat less coverage to the south end of the peninsula. Our original recommendation when we did a draft of this report, when we did not think that there was a possibility of the city to build a station, was the closure of Station 7. Station 7 is located in the center of the city. It's the busiest engine company in the city. It's the busiest area of the city. All those reasons would lead you to think it was a bad unit to close. What Station 7's area does have going for it is that there are fire trucks located fairly closely to the north and the south of that station. So if the city did not have the wherewithal to build a station, and if the city had to close a company, we think that company would be Engine 7. But I want to stress, we are not recommending that in the report, because it's our understanding now that the city does have or can have the capability to build a station. So we're not recommending the closure of Station 7. What would happen if Station 7 were closed is the calls that Engine 7 currently goes on, most of them will be picked up by Engine 2 to the south or Engine 8 to the north, I believe. Firefighters know your head, right? So those units are moderately busy already. So the people that live in 7's area would have a longer wait for emergency services. The resources would still be fairly close, but those resources are going to get busier. As those resources get busier, as Engine 2 and Engine 8 get busier, they're going to be on a call already when the next call comes in. They're not going to be available, so they're going to draw resources in from even further out. So it's a cascading effect. For fire and EMS emergencies, you always get the closest fire truck and the closest ambulance. If the closest fire truck that's normally there is not available, the dispatch system and the dispatchers automatically signal the next closest fire truck or ambulance. So in this system, if you take any unit out of service, it's going to have an impact on other parts of the city. That's just the way it is. Anybody who tells you you can close a station and have no impact on the system is not telling you the truth. Other impacts from Station 7 closing, it's a very high activity area, as I mentioned earlier, and they provide primary service to the airport. If an aircraft is coming into the airport and they announce an emergency, the firefighters from Station 7, if they're not already on a call, go to the airport and they staff a fire truck that's at the airport that's specifically designed for aircraft emergencies. If Engine 7 were not there, those duties would have to be taken over by another company. That company would be further away from the airport. It would delay their arrival at the airport if there were an aircraft emergency. There are not a lot of aircraft emergencies at the New Bedford Airport, but if you're on the plane and there's an emergency, it's the most important emergency of that day if you're on the plane. All right, this is a map of what the coverage would look like without Engine 7. So primary coverage would not be affected very much. There'd be somewhat less coverage to the west. If you see the green that's not to the left of where the station used to be. But again, primary coverage pretends that all the fire units are at home with the firefighters sitting in the rig with their hands on the wheels. That would not be realistic if Station 7 were gone, because other fire trucks would be going into their area to provide coverage in that area. All right. As we got further into the study, there was a suggestion that there be a combined Fire Station 6 and Fire Station 11 at Morton Court and Cove, I think, just right as you take a left off of the JFK to come down to this facility here. We did some mapping on that. There is some impact at the very south end of the peninsula tip and some impact to the west. But this is the recommendation that we're making. If the city has to close a resource, if the city has to close a fire company, we recommend that Station 11 and Station 6 be combined into one fire station at the north end of the peninsula. It still provides a very good level of coverage to the entire city. It doesn't cause the same scale of cascading problems as you would get if Engine 7 were closed. That assumes that the city has the money to build a fire station. All right. All of these are recommendations that we're making to the mayor, the fire chief, and the director. We're from out of town. We're just making recommendations. If the city decides to implement these, if the fire chief and the EMS director and the mayor decide to implement these, it's going to take leadership on the part of the department heads. It's going to take the involvement and communication of firefighters and paramedics in the department to make these things work. There are plenty of fire departments where the fire chief wakes up, has a big bowl of Wheaties in the morning, and decides that he or she's going to change the fire department that day. That doesn't work. The best way to change an organization, and it's true in private workplaces, it's true in the fire department, it's true in EMS, is to involve those employees in those decisions. The fire chief is the technical expert in the city on fire protection. The EMS director is on EMS, but there's a lot of knowledge in the fire department and in the EMS service on those services. So those people should be involved in any change that happens. If they're involved in those changes organically and just naturally, they're going to understand the changes, they're going to understand the reasons for them, and they're going to be more supportive of them as they go through. The firefighters and the paramedics are on duty 24 hours a day. The fire chief and the EMS director limit themselves to 10 or 12 hours a day. So the firefighters have a lot more time to blow something up. The paramedics have a lot more time to blow something up if they don't agree with it. So it's important to involve them in a high level of communication. The city's going to have to support these changes. Some of the changes will cost money. Some of them are free. And the last thing is that it's going to take time. Just to use the example of the facilities that the paramedics and firefighters work out of today. The firefighters and the paramedics that work in those stations love those stations. It's their home for about a quarter of their life. They do the best they can to maintain them. They're responsible for cleaning the stations and for keeping them up in ways that they can control, but the stations need help. Some of the stations are in fairly good condition. Some of them, again, I'll cite Station 11, is in very bad shape. But again, the firefighters love those stations. They love serving the people that live in those first two areas. I wouldn't expect firefighters to support the combination of a station because it means moving and it means changing the relationship with some of their customers. But if the city's finances dictate it, then that may be the only way to do it.